What's going on, guys? I'm Zach from the Lumios Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, and today we will be talking about Paldean Wooper and why this Pokemon is going to be a competitive beast. I mean, look at this thing. Does it look like the face of Mercy to you? The answer is no. Well, obviously, Paldean Wooper probably won't be too competitive, but we're going to speculate on its evolution here and how that could be competitive. And before we do that, we have to have a quick biology lesson. So, in the Pokemon world, there are regional variants, just like Paldean Wooper. And sometimes they do evolve into a regional variant of their evolution, right? Like, for example, we have Galarian Ponyta, who evolves into Galarian Rapidash. But sometimes we have Pokemon that evolve into brand new evolutions altogether when they have a variant. Think things like how Galarian Meowth evolves into Berserker instead of Galarian Persian. The reason this is because these two Pokemon have completely different body types, so they have to give Meowth's evolution a brand new name instead of just calling it Galarian Persian, because look at Berserker. It doesn't look anything like Galarian Persian. It looks like a brand new thing altogether. Same thing with Sneasler versus Weavile. So the question is, will Paldean Wooper evolve into a Paldean Quagsire or a brand new evolution? And this is important to why it's competitive, because it will completely change the outcome of what this Pokemon's stats are like. So if Paldean Wooper evolves into Paldean Quagsire, we are likely going to have a very similar build to Quagsire. So, good news about that is it's pretty easy to speculate what kind of stat distribution this Pokemon's going to look like. It'll very likely still keep the ground poison type. I don't know why they'd slap that on Wooper if it's going to replace one of those types. And it will likely get, because of that, ground moves, poison moves. Very likely it'll still get access to Recover, which is kind of a very niche thing that people like to do with Johtonian Quagsire. And honestly, because it is a water-based Pokemon, like it's an aquatic animal or a semi-aquatic animal, but is not the water type, it still will probably get access to water-type moves, similar to how Graplock, Pincurchin, and some other aquatic but not water-type Pokemon get access to water-type moves. So you're going to be looking at Earth Power, Sludge Wave, Sludge Bomb for your stab coverage, as well as the potential to still pick up Scald, and who knows, maybe even still like Ice Beam and kind of things that are often given to water types as well. Again, Recover is very, very possible here, as is Toxic, because it talks about how Paldean Wooper is covered in a poisonous film, so Toxic just makes a ton of sense. So if you're running a Paldean Quagsire, if that is what ends up happening with Wooper here, then it's pretty cut and dry what you're going to want to do. You're going to want to run a very similar set to how you'd run a Johtonian Quagsire, so Toxic, Recover, and then if you want to take advantage of both the stabs by having Earth Power and Sludge Wave or Sludge Bomb, you could do that. Or if you want to, you could go in a different direction altogether and throw Scald or Ice Beam into the mix and give it only one of its stabs. But obviously, I would recommend holding on to one of this guy's stabs. Now, that said, it should be noted too that Paldean Quagsire wouldn't be quite as good as Johtonian Quagsire. Johtonian Quagsire has a great defensive typing. It resists, or is completely immune to, rather, the electric type, and its only weakness is a quad weakness, but it's the grass type, which really isn't that common in the metagame in the grand scheme of things, right? I mean, it's much better than a water flying type. Now, Paldean Quagsire, on the other hand, with the ground poison typing, would be weak to ice, it'd be weak to ground, it'd be weak to psychic, it would be weak to water. So there's a lot more common typings and certainly a lot more weaknesses that it's, gonna have to face off against. But that's where Paldean Wooper's abilities come in. Paldean Wooper has two abilities, but I'm gonna be real with you, it really only has one. It has Poison Point and it has Water Absorb. But Water Absorb gets rid of one of its weaknesses, and water is a very, very common typing, so you're going to want to go Water Absorb. Why would you want to go with Poison Point when you can take a move that could potentially knock you out and instead use it to heal you up. So Water Absorb will get rid of that water weakness, but even still, it will still have that Psychic, Ground, and Ice weakness. Psychic and Ground, especially Ground, being very common types. Now let's look at the alternative. Let's say that Paldean Wooper evolves into a brand new Pokemon altogether, not Paldean Quagsire, but something brand new, which, to be honest, I'm kind of leaning towards this being the case, because I feel like if it was Paldean Quagsire, they would have debuted it alongside Paldean Wooper, and they didn't, so I'm just kind of feeling Wooper may become something different altogether. Again, it would have a different body type, which has the potential for completely different stats. We could be looking at a very slender, long, more axolotl-y looking Pokemon as Paldean Wooper's evolution, so this thing could become a lot quicker, which is great for such an offensive typing as Ground and Poison. So this Pokemon will very likely still be able to get its, Earth Power, Sludge Wave, Sludge Bomb, all those moves. Honestly, Recover, things similar to Quagsire are still an option here. That's very, very possible. Again, I do think we could still see Toxic on this thing. Also, like Quagsire, or like would be the case for Paldean Quagsire, I do think that we could see this Pokemon picking up some water moves despite being the water type. Now, the question is whether they'll make this thing a physical or a special attacker. Now, normally when we hear Ground, we kind of lean physical, but, there are, of course, special Ground types, and to be honest, I could kind of see Paldean Wooper go either way, and with its evolution being a mystery, especially if it is a brand new Pokemon altogether, well, it becomes even harder to predict what this thing could be. So, we'll plan for both. Let's say this thing becomes a special attacker. I am thinking if it's a brand new evolution, it'll be very quick. It'll be a bit like a glass cannon. So special attacking moves, Sludge Wave or Sludge Bomb, kind of depends here on what you're planning. If you're going into VGC, you might want to kind of steer away from the Sludge Wave, depending on what the rest of your team is, because you don't want to hurt your fellow allies. But if you're looking more at like ranked battles or the Smogon tiers, which I don't like, by the way, but that's a whole nother thing, then you would probably be fine running Sludge Wave because it does have a little bit better base power than Sludge Bomb. You could also be running Earth Power. That's really the only viable special ground move unless this thing gets Scorching Sands, and to be honest, I don't really see it. Maybe that would be pretty cool because it will be like its kind of answer to Scald, but I don't know. Earth Power or Scorching Sands. But again, Scorching Sands is not necessarily a lock. We don't know this thing will get it, and it doesn't seem as likely as Earth Power. Now, some other moves that we could be seeing on this thing is Recover. Recover, obviously, very viable option here. Get your health back. It's plain and simple. We could also be seeing Toxic as well. But I think it's more likely that we're going to see this thing running some moves to take care of its weaknesses, right? Again, for those who need a refresher, it is weak to Psychic, it is weak to Water, it is weak to Ice, and it is weak to Ground. Now, the getting Scald or Ice Beam on it, that would take care of your ground weakness right there, as well as causing some neutral damage against Psychic and Ice types. So this Pokemon's really going to have a lot working for it. Now, if it's a physical attacker, Gunk Shot, Poison Jab, those are your physical options on this thing. Earthquake is an obvious for its physical damaging move, though depending on what kind of thing you're running, Bulldoze could be an option as well. Then we could also see it picking up again because it could be getting access to water moves. Imagine if this thing got Flip Turn. Now you can pivot. Pivoting is fun. Pivoting is good. Pivoting is the way to go, I say. So Flip Turn on this thing is an option. Again, still Recover. That won't really matter whether it's a physical or special attacker. But yeah, it's going to have a lot of options. This is going to be another one of those Mons that I think there are different sets that you can run with it. I mean, if you think about regular Quagsire, I've seen some people run physical sets with Earthquake, and I've seen some people run special sets with Scald. So this could be a very similar thing as well, whether Paldean Wooper becomes a Paldean Quagsire or something new altogether. So on that note, be sure to let me know what you think of this. Do you have any more thoughts? Also, be sure to let me know what you think of Paldean Wooper. Do you think it has a chance to shine competitively when it evolves, of course? And do you think that it's an adorable little guy who is going to be on your team? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Been doing these competitive analysis for a while now, and so far we showed no signs of stopping until November 18th. So you're going to want to stay up to date on that. So again, hit the bell and subscribe and like. Until next time, I will see all of you later.